Hi everyone, my name is Minal. When I came to the Netherlands, I was really interested in learning about my mom's ancestry. I was super interested to delve into a culture that has existed in Sri Lanka for over 150 years. So you can imagine my surprise then when I realized that hardly anyone in the Netherlands knew that the Dutch existed and colonized Sri Lanka for 150 years. And that was really shocking to me, particularly because my mother is extremely proud of her Dutch heritage. My mother is Burgher, which is an ethnic group that exists after the colonizers or the settlers intermixed and married with Ceylon or Ceylonese. And for me, when I realized that not only did they not know about the Burghers, but they didn't know about the fact that they colonized us for 150 years, I was really taken aback. The Burghers have their own culture, tradition, language, and they've really added to Sri Lanka's history. When I was in school, I was taught about all the different colonizers of my island, namely the Portuguese, British, and the Dutch. And what I realized was this history is not really taught everywhere and is largely dependent on which part of the world you come from and where you're studying. I decided I wanted to interview some Burghers that I knew, particularly Dutch Burghers here in the Netherlands, but also all over the world. And what are the reasons they're all over the world and hardly any exist or very few exist in Colombo is because there was a language act called the Sinhala Only Act, which really meant that a lot of the Burghers who primarily spoke English weren't able to exist and work in Sri Lanka anymore. So there was a large migration of Burghers. And so I decided to ask many Burghers from all over the world what it meant to exist as a part of this ethnic group that is slowly being diluted or wiped out or slowly dying. I hope after this video it is clear that Dutch and Sri Lankan cultures are so intertwined, and I really hope that people learned a lot from this video, as well as I hope that we put an end to the systemic erasure of my people and celebrate the various diverse cultures that have existed in our histories.
Hi there, my name's Melanie Oliveira. I was Melanie De Silva. I live in Melbourne in Australia. I'm 56 years old, and both my parents were Dutch Burghers and grew up in Ceylon as they knew it. They migrated to Melbourne in Australia in 1959. My mum was in her mid-20s and my dad was, I think, around 30. I actually identify as being Australian with a heritage of Dutch Burgher, and I'm very curious to learn more about my ancestors and the wonderful, colourful, rich tapestry that makes up our family. And so if anyone asks me, I say yes, I'm Australian. However, my heritage is Ceylonese, and I do refer to it as Ceylonese because when my parents left Ceylon, it was Ceylon and they identified with it that way. And so I suppose that's how I refer to it. And I do explain the different cultural groups that are in Sri Lanka and what that's made up of and how that looks, because obviously people who don't have any knowledge or familiarity with it don't know. So, and it's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm always love to talk about it. So, I do feel happy to belong to this cultural background, and as I say, I would really love to learn more about it. And I have just recently started researching my ancestors and trying to piece together on both sides of my family and on my husband's side of the family as well. He's half Ceylonese, and his mother was an Australian lady who was from a British background. So we have some very interesting conversations, and we actually have 4 children, and they all look, they're very fair. We have 2 children that have blue eyes and 2 children that have really dark brown eyes. They've all got sort of dark brown hair, but the eyes in particular are always a talking point when people meet them, and because my husband and I both have very dark eyes. So I feel like the Burghers are dying out as an ethnic group, and I think that's actually really sad, because I think it would be really lovely to be able to learn more about the Dutch Burghers and the history of where people came from in the Netherlands and how they sort of scattered throughout the world. And it is a fabulous thing that we have family right throughout the world in different parts, and I'm so thankful for that. And it, as I say, it makes up for a very rich tapestry. And my dad talked about the family heritage, and he didn't always give a lot of information about family history, but in terms of being from a Dutch Burgher background, we were very very aware that that's where we came from. So and I've shared that with our children, and it's a very interesting talking point.
Hello, my name is Maran Vikramatunga. I'm Mina's mum, and of course I am proud to be a Burgher, because my mother instilled in us that the Dutch Burghers were something special. I went to a Catholic convent that was run by Irish nuns, and 90% of my classmates were Burghers. And yes, but I'm sad that they don't live here any longer, because they are my closest friends. And whatever it is, they were always smartly dressed, and I think their parents were more lenient, so even we were accused of being brought up like Westerners by my uncles, because my father is a Tamil. And I mean, the food we ate also was a bit different to the normal Sri Lankan rice and curry. It was influenced by Western food. And anyway, Burghers were known for being very jolly and always ready for a good time. And there was plenty of music and song and parties and dancing whenever, at the drop of a hat, I would say. I remember my grandmother would come, who was Irish Dutch, would come in stockings with a hat and gloves to see us, even though it was extremely hot being in the tropics. My mother converted to Roman Catholic when she married my father. So all the Anglicans and the Church of England people would be going to church with the gloves and the hats and the fitted dresses. And my mother would say, what do they think? They're going for a party. I think maybe she was a bit envious that she couldn't dress like that to our church. There are lots of phrases that my classmates remember, like photographing and gallivanting, which are definitely Burgher phrases.
What do those mean?
Gallivanting is going for a good loaf, and photographing means dawdling. Anyway, and there are lots of Dutch, Portuguese, and the different races that came here. The food we continue to make, like the most famous is lamprey, and then love cake, and porridges, and fricadelles, and there are so many things. And even the words and even the style of our house is Portuguese, with a medamidula, which is a garden in the center. Anyway, I really miss the Burghers here, especially now that I'm getting older. They were much more hospitable, and I would say they had a bit more finesse than the other, as my mother would say, the natives. She called them the natives. And we used to be giggling away, and we used to go on telling her, no, you're not a Dutch burger. I think you're Portuguese. And then she would almost erupt with rage. So it was considered prestigious to be a Dutch burger. And like Mina's sister, Raisa has grey eyes and she's very fair-skinned. So obviously from my grandmother. And I think we are also lighter-skinned than the other racers here. Yes, but I think anyway we really regret that the burgers are not around because they were such fun and warm people.
So, do you feel any sense of guilt of being a burger?
Guilt? No, I don't feel any guilt unless my grandmother was up to no good. But
No, because of colonization. Because, they're descendants of colonizers.
yes, of course, yes. But anyway, whatever it is, the people who colonized us, we still have remnants of the good they did, the roads, the railways, the plantations. I mean, we would have had all that if not for these people, because I don't think our people are capable of that, because there is a lot of corruption going on. So, yes, and everybody went, my classmates all left because they scrapped the English system totally.
Yeah, that was after the 1956
Yes,
Sinhala only act.
yeah. Oh, that's enough, no?
Yeah, the last question is, do you feel like the burgers are a dying community in Sri Lanka?
Yes, I think so, because now you only get the older people who are here. Most of the younger ones are overseas, but I must say I know some of them who have come back and they're very comfortable here, because whatever it is, this is our home, and I mean, I suppose we feel more at ease here, although everything is utterly chaotic. But I think, yes.
Hi everyone, I am Raisa Vikramatunga. In terms of my identity, my father is Sinhala Buddhist and my mother is half Dutch Burgher and half Ratna Tamil. In terms of the Dutch Burgher part of my identity, I honestly have very mixed feelings about it, simply because it is the most visible part of my identity, because I have fair skin and light eyes, which is prized as a sign of beauty in both Sri Lanka and the broader South Asian region. But that is also kind of the impact of colonization. Sri Lanka has, been subject to colonial rule by the British, the Dutch, and the Portuguese. So in the present day, I would say that I'm looked at as a bit of a curiosity. I've had people express surprise that I'm Sri Lankan when they speak to me. I've also had a lot of people tell me that they don't consider me Sri Lankan because I don't fit their idea of what being Sri Lanka, with what Sri Lankan is. Sri Lanka has a history of civil war between the majority Sinhalese and the minority Tamil communities. And perhaps as a result of this war and the polarization around it, it's resulted in the government and many others pushing an identity that is almost uniformly Sinhalese. And anyone who is seen as falling outside that is often looked at with suspicion. And that has been my kind of experience as well. However, because we are, seen as kind of a remnant of colonization, and we have historically had privileged positions in society as a result of that, we are just sort of seen as curiosities. I would say hostility most often emerges when people ask me to speak in Sinhalese or say that my Sinhala is not good enough by their estimation because I have a Sinhala last name since my father is Sinhalese, which I think is sad because it is an erasure of my mother's identity, which is also part of my identity. I would consider myself mixed, but according to our government census, I am recorded as Sinhala Buddhist because of my father's ethnicity. And I do think that's sad because we are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, and we have many communities living here, including within the Burgher community. We have both Dutch and Portuguese Burghers here. There are many different languages spoken here, not just Sinhalese and Tamil. We also have Malay spoken here. And the Dutch Burghers have their own kind of colloquialisms in English, which you don't see the majority use. And we have a Malay community here as well. So in these attempts to make me speak either Sinhala or Tamil, I see that there is this kind of compartmentalizing which refuses to accept the diversity of communities that live here. And I do think that we should try to preserve some aspects of Dutch Burgher identity as well, without necessarily hanging on to the kind of colonial mindsets that led to the creation of these communities. I do think that in terms of food, language, culture, there's a lot that the Dutch Burgher community contributes to Sri Lanka. And I also think that I wish that our country would see our diversity as something positive rather than something to be suspicious of or hostile to.
My name is Roselle Harvey. I was a Miss Bowen. I live in Sydney now for the last 50 years. We migrated to Australia in 1974 when I was 18. I am regarded as a Burgher because my mother is a Miss Van Langenberg, so her ancestors were Dutch, and on my father's side, his ancestors were Welsh, and his name was Bowen. When I visit Sri Lanka now, people are surprised that I am Sri Lankan, and because most Burghers have migrated from Sri Lanka, and there are not many left there, and so the people are not familiar with Burghers. When I lived there, there were many more Burghers around, and so it wasn't uncommon to be known as a Burgher or people to know Burghers. Burghers are a mixed race. They have Western traditions as well as Asian Sri Lankan traditions. I am proud to be a Burgher, but I am sad that the Burgher race is a dying race. There aren't many Burghers in Sri Lanka because many of them left when the Sinhala-only policy was brought in. All of us Burghers studied in English, and our first language was English. But when the Sinhala only came in, it was very hard for Burgher families to continue living there, especially for their children who were used to studying in English and then had to revert to Sinhala. Therefore, there was a very big migration of the Burghers to countries like England, Canada, and Australia. And therefore, a lot of people now in Sri Lanka, especially the very young generation, don't even know who Burghers are. So I think we are a dying race, and that makes me very sad because I think we contributed to the culture and the community in Sri Lanka in our own way.
Hey everyone, my name is Willem Bogstra and I'm 34 years old and live in Perth, Western Australia. I'm a Burgher. My dad's Burgher. My mum's Sinhalese. My dad's grandfather, so my great grandfather, was from Friesland in in Holland and moved over to Indonesia to work for the Dutch embassy over there, from what I understand, and then moved to Sri Lanka thereafter to work for the embassy in Sri Lanka, which is where I met my great-grandmother. So do people in Sri Lanka ask me where I'm from? I have got that before. I think most of the time when I was living in Sri Lanka and people would speak to me, I think they would run from my name into just from my, I guess, the lighter eyes and my very poor Sinhala. They would guess that I'm a Burgher, but I have got asked the question where I'm from, which is quite funny, particularly when at the Sri Lankan airport traveling, and the security pulled me aside and asked me where I'm from. So I definitely do get that question. How do I feel about being part of the ethnic group in Burghers? I'd say, I do feel proud to be part of the ethnic group. I mean, it's a minority group in Sri Lanka, so I think I'm definitely proud of being part of that group. I mean, it's probably not as, I think the traditions and customs are not as strong as some of the other ethnic groups in the country, for sure. But yeah, I'm still proud to be a Burgher. I haven't lived in the country for a while now, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is a dying ethnic group in that sense, and I think that's partly because of globalization. Everyone's moving around, everyone's mixing around as well. And like I said, at least with my family, there hasn't been a very strong tradition or customs associated with Burghers in that sense, and hence it's without those strong customs and connections, any ethnic group would or the ties of that would slowly dissipate.
Hello, my name is Deirdre Parker. I'm 68 years old and I live in Lancashire in the northwest of England. My father is a descendant of the Dutch colonisation of Ceylon, or Sri Lanka, as it is now known. His surname is Shopman, descended from young Ernst Shopman, foreman of ship carpenters of the Dutch East India Company. He was born in Amsterdam and was living in Ceylon in 1697 when he married Josina Rowlands, daughter of Dominicus Rowlands of Ghent. This genealogy of the Shopman family in Ceylon was first compiled by a Mr. Altendorf and is held in the Dutch Burgher Club in Colombo. My mother is also a Dutch Burgher. Her maiden name is Fanny Twest. Both my parents are dead now. I have a brother who lives with his family in Melbourne in Australia. My sister lives in England, and we are both married to Englishmen. My paternal grandparents attended the Dutch Reformed Church in Cinnamon Gardens and entertained their annual Christmas carol singers to sherry and cake each December. During my school years, a large number of the Burghers left the country to resettle abroad, mostly in Australia, and also in England and Canada. I am proud of my Burgher heritage within a Sri Lankan nationality. And as a Dutch descendant, I enjoyed visiting Amsterdam.
Hello, my name is Sonia Kok. I'm 63 years of age and I live in Sri Lanka. Now, both my parents are Burghers. My father's ancestors came to Sri Lanka from Brandenburg in East Germany in the 1700s. And my mother has Portuguese ancestry. Now, I speak Sinhalese quite fluently, but most often than not, I am mistaken for a foreigner. I'm proud of my ancestry and for the contribution the Burghers have made to Sri Lanka's cultural diversity. The Burghers are a dying race, both here and abroad.
Hello, my name is Annelie Wambeck, and I identify as a Dutch Burgher, amongst other things. My mum is half English and half Portuguese Burgher, and my dad is a Dutch Burgher, which makes me 100% colonial colonists on all sides. To make it slightly more complicated, I was born in Sweden and I lived in Spain, and I currently live in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where I have been for the last 8 years. So when I'm in Sri Lanka, people often do ask me where I'm from, and they presume India or they guess India. And recently, in the last few years, I've started responding with, I'm a Burgher, and that immediately answers all their questions. They can put me in a box, and I think for them it helps qualify my Sri Lankanness, because, as you would have learned throughout this video, Burghers are not the majority Sinhalese nor Tamil, but we are a separate ethnic group, which has afforded us, and myself as well, quite a lot of privileges. Unearned privilege, of course, from colonialism as well. A concrete example of that would be living in Sri Lanka growing up during the Civil War. In Colombo, we had lots of military checkpoints where they would check your ID. And just from my name, my surname, they can tell that I'm not Sinhalese or Tamil. And I was not hassled, I wasn't questioned further, which was a huge privilege. Of course, having a European passport as well played a significant role. But within Sri Lanka, the Burghers historically were often given positions of power. They were more westernized. Their first language, or our first language, is usually English. And women tend to wear trousers, drink and smoke. The idea of Burgher women liking a good party, and the men too, is quite true. And I would say I definitely embody that aspect of the Burgher ethnicity. I have mixed feelings about being a Dutch Burgher, and it's definitely been a label or an identity that I've had to kind of come to terms with and explore as well a little bit over the last few years. As I mentioned, Dutch Burghers are privileged, but there is also, within Dutch Burghers, there is a hierarchy as well between the Dutch Burghers, the Portuguese, and the British. And there is this saying, which people I know say quite often, that says you're either a Dutch Burgher, a Much Burgher, or a Such Burgher. It is those kind of elitist ideals which I have struggled with. It is something maybe now that the current generation, us nowadays, are coming to terms with, and we are looking at a little bit more. Particularly because of my work. I work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So examining power and power structures is a big part of the work that I do. And I had to do that work myself on my identity as well, and on how I felt about the colonial history of my ancestors on all sides. In terms of, do I think Burghers are a dying ethnic group? Probably yes, in Sri Lanka. A lot of Burghers did leave Sri Lanka, as you've heard, including most of my dad's side of the family. They all live in Australia. But for me, I think the more important question, or the more relevant question, is not are the Burghers dying out? It's, at least here in the Netherlands, where I currently live, do people even know the Burghers exist? Having lived here for 8 years, I was shocked when I came and I discovered people often don't even know that Sri Lanka was colonized. They are aware of other Dutch colonies, but Sri Lanka seems to be less taught in history. I have to say, everyone who I've spoken to are always very interested in wanting to learn more, but it's not something that they often know. And if people do know that Sri Lanka was a Dutch colony, most people have never heard of the Dutch Burghers. So that has been an ongoing, you could call it a frustration, but also an ambition to try and get the word out there and to get people to see the strong ties which still exist in Sri Lanka today between Sri Lanka and the Netherlands. We have so many Dutch influences in Sri Lanka, from the food to the road names, Bloemendal, Delft, frikandels. There is so much pride as well within the Dutch Burghers of their Dutch heritage. And while it is complex, and there are elements that are due to privilege and unearned privilege. I do think it's important that people know that this ethnic group still exists. So for me, it's very important that this message gets out. And of course, I don't blame anyone for not knowing that Sri Lanka was a colony of the Netherlands. It was a big part of my history because that is the island where I'm from. But I am really happy to be a part of this and to help people see the ongoing ties that Sri Lanka and the Netherlands have.
It is clear that Dutch and Sri Lankan cultures are so intertwined. Therefore, I believe it is integral for reparations to take place, to put a stop to the systemic erasure of my people, to celebrate our diverse cultures together.